Mahomes had one of the worst games of his career with 3 turnovers, including a pick-6, and was sacked a career-high 6 times. All right, which quarterback stock changed more after last night? Was it Hurts or Mahomes, Stephen A?
I think it's Hurts because I think he's just been elevated exponentially. I mean, we look at him totally differently today than we did, as much as 2 weeks ago, even before yesterday's game. If the Eagles had lost this game and Jalen Hurts had played relatively pedestrian, he'd have been crucified.
Yep.
There's no way around that, okay? And so for him to perform the way that he performed, we have to look at him totally differently. We have to look at him, and again, I'm not talking about overall talent or whatever, but, he's a winner.
Yeah.
And so when you look at him, Lamar, Josh, Joe, etc., y'all ain't him because he got something done that y'all didn't get done. And we have been talking as if, this dude, Patrick Mahomes, is the roadblock, is the impediment to the success of 3 elite, likely future Hall of Fame quarterbacks in the National Football League who all happen to be in the AFC. And who they couldn't take, Jalen Hurts took down.
Yeah.
Jalen Hurts took down. Joe Burrow's a little bit different because he beat Patrick Mahomes in an AFC title game. But then he lost to Matthew Stafford in the Super Bowl.
Correct.
And so you just got to look at it differently. Jalen Hurts got it done. And when you look at it from that standpoint, where do you go from there? Yeah. I mean, you have to look at him totally, totally differently and talk about him in an entirely different light. It ain't just about respect on his name. He's a champion and a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah.
You have to talk about him differently.
Yeah, it's a no-brainer for me. It's Jalen Hurts because he's humming that song now, Not Like Us. Because those other guys, they're not like him and Patrick Mahomes. And so for me, nothing changes the quarterback position. Nothing changes. No other sport, Stephen A. When you win that championship and you're that quarterback and you're that Super Bowl MVP, it's a whole different ball game because you had the ball in your hands 65 times that game. And he was the reason they won the game. Yeah, the defense was outstanding. We're not going to diminish the defense because that was one of the great Super Bowl defensive performances that we've seen in a long time.
I think
absolutely. I would say top 5. And given who it came against. Now, we've seen other Super Bowl performances, but the quarterbacks wasn't Patrick Mahomes. But it's a no-brainer for me. Patrick Mahomes lost. Okay, he's 3-2. Wow. 3-time Super Bowl champ, 2-time league MVP, 2 5,000-yard seasons, a 50 touchdown. Okay, now maybe we able to talk as GOAT.
Right.
But we still have him universally regarded as the best quarterback in football. Jalen Hurts gets elevated because now you're going to say now, before he was borderline top 10. Hell, now you might have to look at him and say he's top 5 based on what he was able to do in the 2 biggest moments, NFC Championship game, Super Bowl. It's Jalen Hurts for me, and it's not even close.
Yeah, and I think, I know we love debate on this show and we like to disagree. I don't believe there's a disagreement on this. Patrick Mahomes has accomplished so much that everything as it pertains to his legacy is how will it elevate his legacy. Obviously, the conversation for GOAT is different now because Patrick Mahomes, through the first 7 years of his career, was on a different trajectory than we'd ever seen any quarterback based on individual play and team success. And so not winning this game says, okay, we can't put him at 4 right now. He didn't complete the three-peat, which we'd never seen, which I think would have lifted him to a different stratosphere. But for Jalen Hurts, the narratives were already being set up for why he didn't do it. Not why he couldn't do it, but for why he didn't do it. Everyone coming into the week saying, if the Kansas City Chiefs focus on Saquon Barkley, and if Saquon Barkley doesn't have an Offensive Player of the Year day, then can Jalen Hurts pass them to the Super Bowl? Every question on every morning show is about, can Jalen Hurts pass them to the Super Bowl for the last month? And in the last 2 games of the playoffs, that's exactly what he does. Not only does he pass them there, he leads them there. He's composed in the moments. He's poised in the moments. And watching Jalen Hurts, not only pre-game or pre-week or during the game or after the game, he was no different than he's always seemed. He didn't make this moment bigger than it had to be. He wasn't trying to erase the loss of the past, and it didn't seem like he was trying to prove anything to us. He was doing exactly what he's always done his entire career, whatever it takes to win. And so when you go win a Super Bowl against that quarterback, against that head coach, against that defensive coordinator, it does put you in a different conversation. The same way beating Bill Belichick and Tom Brady put Eli Manning in a different conversation for the rest of his career and pretty soon the rest of his life.
It's Jalen Hurts, and it's not even close. So, one, go back to last year. He had the third most turnovers in football last year with starting quarterbacks right behind, I think, Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen. So that was coming off of the 22 season. And so you have a quarterback that has that remarkable 22 season, and then 23, healthy or not, he just wasn't good last year. And then go to this offseason. And there's a lot of question marks around his, at least publicly, relationship with their head coach, Nick Sirianni. And so there was a lot of unknown going into this year. Go back to September. We end September of this season. He's got more turnovers than touchdowns. He had more interceptions than touchdowns thrown at the end of September. Fast forward 3 or 4 months, and he's in a conversation that, and rightfully so, we put Tom Brady and Joe Burrow in that group. But who could beat Patrick in the playoffs? Who could beat Patrick in the win or go home games? And Jalen Hurts is now in that group. He's now in that group. And Molly, I honestly find your question before pretty spot on. I mean, again, the clutch question. He may not be as talented physically as some other, but clutch-wise, I do think that's a very worthy conversation of, hey, outside of Patrick, who's the most clutch quarterback in football right now? And Jalen Hurts got a lot of evidence for him to be the vote.
Was this one of the worst Super Bowl appearances you've ever seen when we look on the other side by Patrick Mahomes?
It was one of the worst, but hell, did you see Peyton against the Seahawks? Did anybody forget that was Stephen A? I mean,
evidently.
I mean, the first play of the game, it's a safety. Now, how you get the first play of the game, and you're like, oh, this thing over? I mean, 48-3. 48-3. It could have been 60-3.
Yeah.
And that was because Pete Carroll is ultra conservative. He's like, hey, we're not gonna put the ball in harm's way. But yeah. And the reason why I ranked the performance that the Eagles did last night, it was who they did it against. Now, I was on the sidelines, and I watched the Baltimore Ravens take the life away from the New York Giants, figuratively, obviously not literally. Go back, if you want to hear a stat line, look at what they did. Punt, interception, punt, fumble, punt, turnover, down. They didn't score. The offense didn't score a point. They got that point on the kick return. I was in the stands, 43-8. I was in the stands, 24-10, Broncos against Carolina. That last night was one of the most impressive performances defensively that you're going to see, considering who they did it against. Well, what made the Eagles, what made Seahawks, it was Peyton. Think about that's Peyton, 5 MVPs. He had just won the MVP, Stephen A, that year. Yeah. 55 touchdowns, 5,400 yards, 10 picks. And they did that to him. We know who Patrick is. We know what he is. And the Eagles did that to him.
I think what the Legion of Boom did against Peyton Manning is comparable. Outside of that, to go up against a guy as great as Patrick Mahomes. See, I'm not looking at the final score. I'm looking at the fact that it was 34-0. Mm-hmm. It was a romp. Yeah. I'm looking at 1 first down in the first half. I'm looking at them going 0 for 6 on third downs. I'm looking at Travis Kelce and DeAndre Hopkins. Nothing. 0 receptions in the first half. It was an annihilation. It was 24-0 in the first half. They ultimately went up 34-0, and garbage time had arrived. It was a complete, utter beatdown. And when you see something like that happening, okay, the better team won. This was worse than that because you looked at it and you didn't anticipate that it was going to be that kind of romp.
You did not.
And remember, it's the greatest deficit that Patrick Mahomes had ever faced in his career. Okay, his QBR was 1. Yeah. I mean, my God. I mean,
In the first half.
When you think in the first half, when you think of the quarterbacks throughout NFL history who have had poorest performance, that was what Patrick Mahomes was reduced to, courtesy of Philadelphia's defense. I mean, it was shocking.
Was
the
it
word
more-
disappointing
was it
for me
more-
doesn't compare to how shocked I was that such a
not the
thorough
worst.
beatdown transpired.
Yeah, let's let the guys get in. RC?
It's not the worst. It's not the worst. Rich
Who's the worst?
Gannon in 2002, 2003 Super Bowl was worse. Rich Gannon threw 5 interceptions. And he threw 2 of them on pump seam. And he was the MVP that year. So we're not going to talk about Rich Gannon's total body of work.
Right.
That year, Rich Gannon was a dude. And they playing Tampa Bay. Listen, Dexter Jackson is the Super Bowl MVP because Rich Gannon was just throwing it to him. I talked to D. Brooks the other day, and he was like, yeah, man, when I sealed the deal with the pick 6, godly, Rich Gannon. Rich Gannon came out there and he was like, the hell with it all. The hell to throwing it to my team. I'm going to throw it to your team. And this is what we're going to do. That performance by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defensively is one of the greatest of all time throughout the season, and then the way they showed up at the Super Bowl because of the way they put points on the board based on their defense. I do look at Patrick Mahomes' performance last night as extremely disappointing. As when we think about him and his overall greatness, something that's almost unfathomable about him being able to do or seeing someone relegate him to. But to me, the Rich Gannon performance is the worst I've ever seen in the playoffs.
This is the most disappointing Super Bowl performance I've ever witnessed. It's the most shocking Super Bowl performance I've ever witnessed. The chance to three-peat, 5 Hall of Famers trying to do so, I can't get over. I literally cannot get over that offense giving up more sacks, Kansas City, than first downs acquired. Stephen A., you talk about 1 first down in the first half. That was the first play of the game. I mean, they gave up more sacks than they acquired first downs. They didn't get ball in the first 3 quarters past midfield. RC, you know this. Shannon, you know this. It's not like Philadelphia is complicated in what they do defensively.
No.
Yeah.
They lined up and were just like, hey, we're going to give you the same front. We're going to give you the same coverage, and we're going to beat the absolute tar out of you. And for me, like, I had no expectation that anything like that, to make that team look that way, and at 17-0, get them walking back to the huddle like, we ain't got no shot. That's the most shocking and disappointing Super Bowl performance I have witnessed.
RC, that I said that is because we don't think of Rich Gannon like we do Peyton Manning and Patrick Mahomes. Yes, he was the MVP, but Peyton Manning, that season which he had already won a Super Bowl and a Super Bowl MVP. He had already gone to another one. Patrick Mahomes was a 3-time champ, Stephen A., with 3 Super Bowl MVPs, with 2 regular season MVPs, and that happened. So that's why
Expectations were different.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back and look at that film, what the Ravens defense did to Kerry Collins, but no disrespect. Okay, I say it, and it's going to be very disrespectful. Yeah. That's Kerry Collins. That's not Patrick Mahomes. That's not Peyton
No disrespect, dude.
Right. No disrespect, but much disrespect.
No
That's cool.
disrespect, but it's
I love that qualifier,
disrespectful.
Shannon. All right,